My dear brothers and sisters, the gospel reading of today is so important that we cannot omit saying something that will guide us. We hear the teaching of Jesus, which I call the Christian identity. That Christian identity is to be like Jesus. To understand what we have read in the gospel reading, there are passages that help us. One passage is in the Old Testament already, where it is written, you have to love God with all your heart, with all your might, with all your mind, with all your understanding, and you love your neighbor as yourself. If this is correct, why did Jesus teach that love is a new commandment? Why didn't he just say, you already know as it is in the Old Testament, love your neighbor as you love yourself? He didn't say that. He said, I give you a new commandment. What makes it new? Another passage helps us in 1 John, first letter of St. John. The Apostle John teaches us, and it's very important. What does he teach? St. John says, this is the love I mean. It is not our love for God. No, it is God's love for us. Because God's love for us is gratuitous. It is unmerited. None of us qualifies to have the love of God. We remember the hymn by St. Bernard of Clairvaux, Jesu Ducis Memoria. Jesu Ducis Memoria. And if we want to understand what the gospel reading is saying, we go to John chapter 3, verse 16. When Jesus was having this important conversation with a secret disciple, Nicodemus, who came at night, Jesus said to him, this is it. This is love. See how much God loves the world, that he gave the world his only Son, so that whoever believes in him may not perish but have everlasting life. That is what we are talking about. That Jesus gave his life, and therefore he demands that we not only love him, but love as he loved. And the mystery comes clearer when we understand the teaching of St. John as contained in the prologue. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. In other words, the one St. John says that this is the love I'm talking about, that God loved us first. And when Jesus says God gave his Son, we remember that the Son of God is himself God. One God with God, one man with men, human beings. Jesus became one of us in order to teach us that which is at the heart of God, love. And therefore, as we listen to the teaching of Christ today, that you love one another just as I have loved you, we remember that we cannot exhaust the gift of love if we try to love other people. Because the more we love, the more we remember that we have not died for others. This is how much God loves us, that he gave his only Son. And that reminds me of the declaration of St. Paul in the letter to the Galatians chapter 2, if we read verse 20. St. Paul says, it is no longer I who live, it is Christ who lives in me. Yes, I live here and now in this physical body, but my life, my real life, is my life of faith in Jesus Christ, the Son of God, who loved me so much that he gave his life for me. If this is how much God loves us, then we should love one another. What does this mean? What does this mean in practice? We go back to Acts of the Apostles, the life of the church in Jerusalem. St. Luke reports that there was nobody who lacked anything in the community. And the Christians, we read today about the mission journeys of Paul and Barnabas, how they came back after a long journey. They kept coming back through the road like a return journey to where they began. And when they came to this Antioch, they lived there for a long time. And there was a report about the church in Antioch that they loved one another so much that outsiders gave them the name Christians because of the love they had for one another. The outsiders said they talk to Christ and they live like Christ. And Tertullian reported this. He said that people commenting on the lives of Christians said, see how much they love one another, because these people who are commenting hate one another. See how they are prepared to die for one another, because these people are more prepared to kill one another. And I have an important question for you as you listen. Do we really love one another as Jesus teaches? There was nobody who had any need in Jerusalem. And yet, it is the same Catholic Church. We believe in the apostolic tradition. We are very quick to talk about the apostolic tradition. There is also the tradition of love in the church. And this love of the church in Jerusalem, where nobody lacked anything, should be the tradition in the church, that nobody in the church lacks anything. But it's not so, because among Catholics in the world, there are millionaires and billionaires, and there are people who have no means of having one good meal a day, and yet all are Catholics. That is a shift, an aberration, a discontinuation of that tradition of koinonia, of love in the community. So the question I want to ask you today, my dear brothers and sisters, is that I want you to look at your bank account today when you go home and ask yourself, how Catholic am I? Why have I saved thousands, if not millions, of Swedish crowns? And there are fellow Catholics who have no food to eat, no clothes to wear. There are Catholic children who cannot go to a good school, not because they hate education, but because their parents cannot pay for it. These are things I want us to meditate on. And as this Mass continues, I want you to focus on the crucifix and ask yourself, this is love in action. He gave his life for us. How much am I willing to be like the holy priest, Maximilian Kolbe? He gave his life for us. Therefore, we should give our lives for our brothers and sisters.